All right, ladies and gentlemen and ass kickers, welcome back to the Fairly KickAss deep dive into Tupac Shakur. I'm Jay. Zach, Dan are with me on this journey into the life and work of Tupac. It's been an interesting run so far, a lot of good stories, and we have more to tell. So without further ado, let's just get right back into it. All right, so anyway, he's in jail, and he claims that while he's in prison, he only wrote one song, choosing instead to become an enlightened philosopher. He read Machiavelli's The Prince. He read Sun Tzu's Art of War, and other things. For all that, he came out of prison a much more aggressive writer. 4 months after getting out, All Eyes on Me, which is his first and maybe the first in hip hop double album. Some more of that, him doing things that nobody else in hip hop is doing. Well, this is a double album. That gets released 4 months after he gets out of prison. That's some rapid fire writing by anybody's standards. It's possible that he did this because he had a 3-album contract with Death Row, and this satisfied 2/3 of it. It's also possible that his righteous anger, indignation, and hostility led him to write approximately 10 years worth of album releases in 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I would say that's a good bet.
Honestly, I'm not sure. The fact that the record contained a great number of almost party tracks, as opposed to the more socio-political stuff that was on his previous albums, leads me to believe that it's more just that he didn't like the idea of being under contract. I think he just didn't want that hanging over his head. So he wrote things really quickly.
Yeah.
Anyway, there were 5 singles released from the record. 2 of them reached number 1 on the Billboard charts. That's How Do You Want It and California Love. And 90s Rap had its prized pony. The album sold over 500,000 copies in the first week and has sold over 10 million copies as of 2014. So this is even 7 years ago. As of 2014, it was certified diamond by the RIAA. To me, I would say probably the most interesting song on the record is How Do You Want It? And that is because it's sort of the answer to Biggie's Who Shot Ya? So there's a little bit of backstory here too. I don't know how much you know about the relationship between Biggie and Tupac. It's often considered that's the East Coast, West Coast rivalry, is those two individuals. They were friends beforehand. Tupac is the reason that Biggie pitched to Bad Boy. He sent him to Puffy.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So then I don't know, there's something happened. And that friendship dissolved in a rather fantastic fashion. But while Who Shot Ya doesn't name names, it alludes to everything, which is how Puffy was able to lie and say it was actually about So So Def. Hit 'Em Up is the B-side to How Do You Want It? And it most definitely names names.
There are names.
It is not just a diss track. This is a finger point at betrayal and traitors and false friends and the inevitable demise of those individuals.
That's such a nice way to put it. Inevitable demise.
What do you think?
So if we look at where we're at from a time perspective, I just want to quickly kind of touch on this because you mentioned just the sheer volume of writing on this album and the quickness, how swiftly Pac was able to get lyrics out. That's not something that's unique to All Eyes on Me either. As we sit here in February 1996, about 4 years and 3 months after the release of Tupacalypse Now, and this is the 5th album, and really, if you look at it the right way, the 6th album, because as Jay said, it is a double album. Now, I promised myself that I would not do plugs during this episode, so I am not going to tell any of you to search for Spotify for the Fairly KickAss Deep Dive into Bone Thugs and Harmony and then listen to it, because that would be rude of me if I were to do that. But if you happen to have listened to the Bone Thugs and Harmony Deep Dive on the Fairly KickAss Podcast on Spotify, you would hear us talking about how Bone took an album's worth of material and tried to stretch it out into 2 albums, which ended up becoming their double album, The Art of War. The result wasn't great. The result was very not great at all. But in contrast to that, I do feel that Pac has a full slate of 2 albums, or books, as the 2 discs are called, book 1 and book 2. Yeah, I would totally agree with you, Jay, that this is definitely a lighter hearted album than than the first 2. That's not to say that there aren't some harder tracks on this album, but at least the harder tracks are a bit more accessible. Something like Ambitions as a Ride is very accessible to America's Most Wanted. I think a lot of that is production, certainly. Daz Dillinger getting it done to a great extent on the first album, or the first disc, rather, the first book. And then Johnny J really kind of taking the reins in the second book. Yeah, it's a more, and I alluded to this before, it's a more popular album. I don't think it's necessarily more mainstream, but certainly comparatively, it is a much more accessible listen. So I think probably some folks that were huge Tupac fans probably heard this, and the word sellout probably grazed their minds. I could absolutely see that. But at least for me, I did not picture it that way. I pictured it as good content. I pictured it as the writing, maybe not quite as socio or politically infused, certainly, but that to me didn't detract at all from the album. I think that I'm probably going to be in the minority here if I had to guess. Dan, I'm going to ask you if I am in the minority, knowing what the answer is already.
Well, I mean, if I was going to fire back with a question, then would you, if you had to put a fine point on it, which is the stronger album, Me Against the World or All Eyes?
Me Against the World is the stronger album.
Okay, sure. You're not in the minority then. No, I agree with you on that one. And there's the, I don't want to say like a lack of socially relative songs here, but it's not as upfront and poignant as it would be in previous records. Jay steals my thunder for my standout track because, of course, you would expect the ginormous smash hit that everyone knows and can do at least 3 verses of California Love. But my standout is How Do You Want It? Everyone seems to forget that this was a single that also went double platinum. It was huge. Yes, it did feature Casey and JoJo. Do not think anything less of that.
Damn.
But just like California Love, it has more of the funk and R&B influences that made Pac's songs so recognizable, and they feel so much bigger than what anybody else was doing at the time. I think it's, again, that's a really difficult thing to quantify. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So at this point, isn't it that I didn't, I don't have research on this right now. But if my memory serves me right, this is about the time where Dre starts to have more of a hand in the workings of Death Row Records, right? Like,
I would say with you, I'm not sure, but it feels about the time where more of his stuff is up front.
He's a little more, and he was always a little more business minded, as opposed to like he was like, this album is going to sell. You're going to make money on this one.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain of that, but the fact that he appears on the record in the song that hits #1 and drives this to diamond status, I think that says something.
You should just say Dre knew a hit when he knew he had a hit on his hands and knew what to strap the rocket to, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
And I can make it real quick because this is where corrupted files start to become just a wonderful thing in this game. Once again, roll all the way down to the last track on the second disc for a deep cut, and Heaven Ain't Hard to Find. And the last clear things I could get out of this file was a smooth and funky jam. That. So just go with that. It's just a smooth and funky. Go listen to the last thing on book 2.
All right.
No arguments here. It's a good jam.
Yeah. I would also add I Ain't Mad at You to that list of interest, because it's not a hard song, and it has Danny Boy on it, which,
and interestingly, he's all over book 2. Actually,
he is.
He's on several tracks.
And it's not really surprising, actually, and he pops into mind pretty regularly. If you haven't watched the documentary Kids in the 90s, he shows up a lot in that, as he was real good friends with Punky Brewster. He's such an interesting individual. And that song is despite the fact that it has a weird edge to it a weird lack of edge to it, it's still a great tune.
One other one that I'll add, just because I don't know if it's necessarily one of the best songs on the album, but it is possibly my favorite Tupac song, is Life Goes On. A tune about the loss of homies, whether it's to death or whether it's to the prison system, and just knowing that, you know, we're going to mourn you, we're going to talk about you, we're going to reminisce, we're going to pour one out, and then we're moving on. We're going to keep it moving. We're still going to do our thing. It's a very cool song to look at, even from a lens of just existing and being, and knowing that we all go through that shit and we all go through loss, and, you know, we have to not pretend like it didn't happen, but we have to move forward because life goes on, man.
Life goes on.
And then follow it up with the next track, And Only God Can Judge Me.
Mm-hmm.
What a 1-2 punch.
Right?
Holy shit.
We could just name every track on the record.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, I'm trying not to.
I don't want to do just like this track is good and this track is good. Oh wait, that's the record.
Hot take: Tupac's good.
I don't know where. Wow, that's out of nowhere.
Can we cut that?
Yes,
yeah, I don't know. That seems very controversial.
Or just cut it because it was stupid.
Well, yes, there's that too.
You're cutting the whole show then, man. We've been over this.
All right. So this is his highest selling record to date, and he has money flowing in for it, but also flowing right back out for all this legal shit that's going on. And that brings us to the final album that gets released during Tupac's life. Actually, it doesn't get released, but it gets recorded during his life. Released under the stage name Machiavelli, the Don Killuminati, the 7 Day Theory, usually just shortened to the 7 Day Theory. You leave out that whole Don Killuminati thing. It took a total of 7 days to make this album. The first week of August, 1996. The claim is that the writing of the lyrics and the recordings all took place over a 3-day period, and then the rest of that week was dedicated to mixing. At the core of the record was a central theme: vengeance. And thinking about vengeance. And thinking about things related to vengeance. It's a very cerebral album, but it's about getting revenge. And the album did great, and is great. MTV calls it the 9th best hip-hop album of all time, for whatever we care what MTV says.
Not much.
I mean, they have it. They have a thing on music. How again?
Well, Tupac he was on MTV a lot in the early 90s. The fun part about the Machiavelli record is that it wasn't supposed to be released as a major label release. It was at least according to Papa G, who was the Death Row spokesman or public relations guy. He said it was meant to be an underground thing, just not really pushed. And then, you know, Tupac gets murdered and they change their mind.
Like you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. The record calls out a great number of East Coast rappers by name. Most of them on Bad Boy. Puffy, Biggie, Nas, Junior Mafia, Mobb Deep, De La Soul, Jay-Z, Exhibit, and even former label mate and collaborator Dre. No one is safe from the verbal sparring of Machiavelli.
I just want to really quickly correct you there. That was actually Mob Sleep that was being referred to now. And Jay-Z from Hawaiian Sophie fame. Which just kills me every fucking time I hear it.
Yes. I mentioned Nas in that list, and it does appear, it looks like Tupac and Nas were able to patch things up, as it was revealed that Tupac was listening to Nas at the time of his murder. That interview where that information was revealed was given in 2006 by a Death Row associate named Kurt Cobain. You can't make this shit up.
What a story. Oh my gosh.
But because, you know, it was 20 years after the fact, who knows how accurate that information is or why it even matters. I'm not the biggest fan of 7 Day Theory. I would rank it third on my list of the albums that we've talked about so far. How does this record meet your expectations of Mr. Shakur?
Well, I think for me, you kind of hit the nail on the head with the central theme of vengeance. And I hate going back to the well. No, I don't. I love going back to the well. It's free content, baby. But we're going to talk about Bone again, and we're going to talk about The Art of War again, because I feel like there are a lot of similarities between those two albums, or at least the feel and some of the central theme of righting a perceived wrong, of making sure that everyone understands that we are better than them and they can't hold a candle to us, and so on and so forth. And as a motif, that is very powerful and very impactful in a number of ways that we've seen, not just with Tupac and Bone, but throughout the music industry. Jay-Z's Takeover is a perfect example. One of my absolute favorite rap songs, or songs period. It is a diss track. There's no other way to slice it. It is a diss track through and through. But it is a diss track. It is not a diss album. And I think, to me, I'm kind of selling it short, because certainly the 7 Day Theory isn't completely just a fuck Biggie and fuck Nas sort of album, even though that is a large part of it. but I feel like that does detract from some of the other things that Pac has rapped about in the past. From a thematic standpoint, I think it does suffer a tiny bit because of it. From a writing standpoint, I think it does. Perhaps it suffers more from the fact that it was written in 7 days. From a writing standpoint, it's hard to do anything like it's. I don't even think I could run a mile in 7 days, much less write a full length feature album.
Right.
Jay, you mentioned that it was your third out of 6. I would probably put it down at number 4 for me.
And I could see that.
But again, you're talking about 6 of the best albums ever released in the history of hip hop. Even Thug Life is still, if none of the other albums existed, Thug Life is still a fantastic album in a vacuum. So take that with a grain of salt, listeners. We're not saying that, we don't like these albums, but in reference to each other, there has to be some ranking. I mean, it's what we do. If you listen to the podcast, you understand the bit.
It's literally all we do.
It's literally lists and rankings are kind of our thing.
That's all we got. It's so sad.
Oh my God, you're right. It is all we do. Son of a bitch.
We're conversationally anal retentive. We have to rate everything we say.
Can I spread out for you in a nutshell what's wrong with that comparison?
Spread it out for you in a nutshell?
Wow, that's a different show altogether, guys.
That's all right. None of us are professional writers.
Nope, not at all. Except technically,
you.
I am.
Yeah.
But to bring it back around, I actually agree with the criticisms on that one, and to say that there were 2 songs that stuck out to me, and they were both the singles, and they stuck out for both reasons. I absolutely love jamming to "Live and Die in L.A." Again, just such a groove, and it works, and it's kind of like a walking tour of the stereotype of what anyone who doesn't live in LA believes that city to be. And yeah. And then I just love the story about Toss It Up. besides it being one of those tracks where he goes hard in on Dre, but then just the story around it, that the original production on that track became No Diggity.
Huh. Yes.
And they weren't going to change it until a cease and desist order came. Yeah.
Plus Casey and JoJo.
Again. How do they keep getting into good songs?
How? I'd love to know.
And they're still 2 years away from All My Life, where all of this goes away and becomes a completely different thing.
They were friends with the Wayans brothers. That's how you got anything done in the 90s.
That's fair. That's
fair enough. Yeah, okay. Fair. Yeah, all right. It's like that was a joke, but we're like, oh.
I do.
All at the same time.
So here's the thing. I actually do remember them performing on In Living Color.
Okay, right.
So I still remember the intro. Casey, JoJo, Devontae, Swang, Mr. DJ, or for Uptown MCA Records, put your hands together for Joe to see.
Wow. I agree.
I did not expect that, sir.
Nor should you. Why would you expect that?
I have I remember the existence of the Jim Carrey Snow parody and how vicious that was.
Yeah.
But I could not give you the verses. I mean,
I watched a lot of In Living Color. It was my favorite show.
I mean, Homie the Clown, dude.
No, actually, sidebar, if you have not read it, Homie Don't Play That is a fantastic book.
Really?
Yes. It's about the importance of In Living Color in the pantheon of black television. It's phenomenal.
Are you starting a Fairly KickAss book club?
Oh, God. No.
Oh, no.
No, I can't.
That's what I'm hearing.
That's what I hear. It's okay. I started something on the last thing we recorded. I've already forgotten what I supposedly started, so.
Cool. Good deal.
God damn it.
Sorry, I got the video of Jim Carrey as Snow.
Imposter.
I can't even hear it.
Yes.
His facial expression.
Oh my God.
So dumb. Okay, I gotta turn this off.
Turn that off, but go back and listen to it, because like the rest of the world was kind of when it came to Snow as a concept, but the writers of In Living Color were not okay with it. That was a, speaking of diss tracks, holy shit. They went for the throat.
Yeah, they did.
And it was great.
Yes, it was. Oh, man. Okay.
Where do you go from here?
Well, we preferably cut most of what just happened.
That's probably for the best.
So it's notable that the Machiavelli did phenomenally, mostly because of the unfortunate demise of our subject for this show. So let's talk about that. In September of 1996, a month after finishing the recording of 7 Day Theory, Tupac and Suge Knight are in Vegas for the Tyson fight against Bruce Seldon. Tyson knocked Seldon out in less than 2 minutes, if you were wondering. After the fight, Tupac and his crew got some petty revenge on a Crip named Baby Lane Anderson. We all know Suge runs with Bloods as his bodyguards, which has some unsurprising side effects. Baby Lane had accosted one of Pac's crew a few weeks prior to that, attempting to take one of those big-ass death row medallions that they hang around their necks. Dude tried to rip it off his neck. And
not advisable.
Not advisable. So the crew took this opportunity. Someone had cited him at the fight, and they took this moment at the MGM to show him how they felt about that. There's security footage of this. It's actually on YouTube. It's not great video, but it does clearly show the assault occurring. Tupac and his boys beat the dude down. Then they get into Suge Knight's black BMW 750 IL as a part of a larger entourage. And they head out to the nightclub that Death Row owns, which it was Club 662. Now it's 7 is the name of the club. Something of a hot spot in LA. I've never been there. I don't know.
You know, we've never been there.
Yeah. The next marker on the timeline of that night is that at 11 o'clock, there's a bicycle cop that stops the car. Now, imagine, I found this to be a little bit amusing, because imagine Suge Knight and his entourage of black BMWs stopping for a bike cop. But it happened. And he stops the Beamer because their music was too loud and there were no license plates on the car. So, you know, they have a discussion. The plates were in the trunk. Somebody shows them to the officer and he lets them go. No ticket. Just go on your way. At 11:15, the entourage stops at a red light. A white Cadillac sedan pulls up alongside Knight's BMW and opens fire. It seems pretty certain that Tupac was the intended target, as he was the only one in the vehicle that was hit directly, though there were a few bullet shards that hit Knight in the head. Tupac was rushed to the hospital, having taken bullets to one arm, one leg, and 2 in the chest, one of which entered his right lung. He was put on life support, where he remained for 6 days, before finally succumbing to internal bleeding on September 13th. Arrangements must have already been made at this point. Like they kind of saw the writing on the wall, because he was cremated the next day.
Oh, wow.
and members of the Outlaws, his other side group that wasn't Thug Life and was not even marginally way better. They mixed some of his ashes with some weed and smoked him.
Also not advisable.
Well, I don't know. It was there's a line. Okay, so did you listen to the Outlaws record that came out in 99? It's called Still I Rise or something like that.
I did not.
It's Tupac and the Outlaws. The album came out a few years after he died. He had recorded it with them. All his parts were already recorded. And there's a song called Black Jesus. And in it, he says, here, I'll see if I can pull up the actual lyrics to it. But he alludes to wanting to be cremated and smoked.
I mean, I guess if of all the people to ask you to do that, like that's probably the one I'm not going to say no to be fair.
Right.
Right. And it states it very clearly on his verse in the song. And I was correct. It's Still I Rise is the name of the album. And I don't know if he meant it literally or if they misinterpreted that as that it was meant to be metaphoric, but that's what happened. A life ends, a legacy lives on. 5 more studio albums would be released, all of them selling monstrously. A DVD of his last performance at the House of Blues in West Hollywood was released by Death Row. Dre and Snoop did a performance at Coachella in 2012 with a hologram of Tupac. They performed 2 of America's Most Wanted and California Love, I believe. Dre was asked to do a tour that way with the hologram, and to his credit, he was like, "That's stupid." Because I agree. No thanks.
Right. Yeah, it's not a disrespect thing. It's just like it's not a very respectful thing either.
No,
there are way better ways to commemorate Tupac than that.
And then in 2015, the Grammy Museum opened up an exhibition dedicated entirely to Tupac. How much of his posthumous work did you ingest?
So for me, I certainly grazed over and I wish I'd had a chance to listen more closely to everything past the 7 Day Theory. You know, I did listen to a bit of Are You Still Down and graze through the other 4 albums Until the End of Time, Better Days, Loyal to the Game, and Pac's Life. A lot of that, well, all of it, like you said, Jay, was recorded previously. And I'm certain that there has to be so much more unreleased material that we don't even know about the existence of.
Well, and
if I had to guess.
We know that the original Thug Life record was scrapped and never released. A handful of tracks made it on to the new recording of it, but I kind of want to hear what that record would have been like the way it was designed initially.
For sure. Yeah, I would have. And plus, I mean, on top of those albums, you also have the Greatest Hits album, which in and of itself includes 4 previously unreleased tracks.
Yeah.
Which that one came out in 1998.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. I actually, for my taste, it's odd, but I feel like the Outlaws record is the most Tupac of the posthumous releases. I loved that record.
It does make you wonder from an intent standpoint too. And certainly, you know, with Tupac himself not being able to have any sort of creative direction, it does kind of make you wonder, because like you said, those albums after his death were selling like hotcakes. So if you are wanting to maximize that revenue, are you going to put out things that are, you know, socially present, things that are hard hitting, or are you going to put out the most accessible, easily digestible things that you possibly can so that you can satiate the people who are going to be, you know, buying those albums and spending money that is going to go to a large part in your pocket as a record exec?
Yeah.
I hate to put it like that, you know, because it doesn't, to me, it doesn't soil Tupac and his legacy at all, because again, he had no choice in that, but right. I could absolutely see that happening.
And also he did record all of those verses. So it like the music's still his.
True. But is it portrayed in the way that he would
No idea.
He would have wanted it. That's the, and we'll never know, of course, and it's unfortunate that we have so many albums that we just don't know what Pac's direction would have been, what his artistic vision would have been, for those releases. Ultimately, it's still better to have them than to not have them. So I'm still happy in whatever form they're in that we had 5 more releases of one of the greatest, if not the greatest to ever do it.
Indeed. Were there any, I have a couple things to wrap this up, but let's talk about a handful of songs that you could pull out of the posthumous releases. For me, I would go with Black Jesus off of the Still I Rise record from the Outlaws.
I guess I'll pick possibly the most influential Tupac song of all, which didn't end up on an album whatsoever, which of course was the song Changes, featuring the artist talent, not featuring the talent of, I'll see myself out now. But this is basically like every social discussion, every, political discussion, every injustice, everything that Tupac has really kind of encapsulated throughout his entire career and really just neatly tied into one beautiful, gorgeous, but also kind of hard to listen to song because of its realness. It was recorded back in 1992, produced, as we'd mentioned before, Big D the Impossible was the mastermind behind the original recording and production, later remixed in 98 for the release on the Greatest Hits album. It's a song that I don't think loses anything from not being a part of the technical discography, because to me it's just as much canon as anything else that he's put out. Dan, did you have any others from that posthumous era that hit your eye?
Well, obviously Changes, and I'll just go with an ad that there was just something about that sample, which was Bruce Hornsby in The Range, that it just combines the lyrics and it feels hopeful. It feels like, yes, all the descriptions and the rest of the lyrics describing hardship and injustice, but there's something in that particular sample used that just feels hopeful, that changes are actually on the way. And it's unfortunate to say that we're how many years out from that, and it's still so relevant because we're waiting on a lot of that. And then to not be as much of a downer to wrap my part up there, but then also fast forward to Loyal to the Game and Ghetto Gospel. I'm sure a lot of people looked at it, why the fuck is Elton John featuring on a Tupac record?
Because why not?
Because why not? And the sample of his vocals actually works here. So those are the two standouts out of the stuff that I heard.
Right on.
I listened to Better Days and I wanted to pull a song off Better Days, but it's actually, again, to my listening, better. It's a long listen, but it's better to take as a piece on the whole than try to parse out a song or a single for it.
I think I would agree with that, actually. That's good. So then, there are some rumors about him faking his death, even though he has been dead as long as he lived. Those conspiracy theories persist. Some say he's living it up in Cuba, laughing at all of us. Some say he's in New Mexico. It doesn't help that the video for Hail Mary literally has him rising from the dead to murder his enemies. Gives a little bit of fuel to those theories. Some of the other things that get talked about are a little out there too. Like, we know he had a really diverse friendship population. He was into a little bit of everybody. And one of the oddest things that, as I was doing all this, a lot of it didn't really merit talking about. It was just people claiming, conversations and stuff that they've talked about with Tupac. And a lot of it's not really interesting until you get to an interview with Alanis Morissette, where she claims that they were going to open open a restaurant together.
Come again?
Yeah. Alanis Morissette. So
okay.
This is for real. Like, people who were around Tupac at the time, he jammed Jagged Little Pill. Dude loved that record. And there was rumors, again, none of it substantiated, that he was talking about trying to sign Alanis to his label. Wow. Right.
I would have liked to have seen that, though.
I know.
For sure.
Either way, they very definitely were friends. Like there were conversations between the two of them a lot. And she claimed in an interview that they were planning on opening a restaurant together. No verification available.
I mean,
but
right? That kind of almost sounds like a sitcom.
Well, I mean, no more than say, Coolio and Martha Stewart working together, or
and that's true. And that was Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart was reality.
And Martha Stewart.
That's very true.
So,
yeah,
but that actually turned out really well.
Yeah, it did. That's because Snoop is probably the most versatile person on the planet.
I have bagged on him for his late career features, but it's true. Like he does kind of mold himself to just about anybody.
And honestly,
he's a chameleon. Yeah.
And honestly, you could compare what he does now sort of to the way Tupac did his business back then. Like, he listened to everything. He knew what was going to be a hit. He was ready to talk to anybody, as long as they weren't on Bad Boy Records.
Fair, actually.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I caught was during the 2020 presidential campaign, Kamala Harris made a comment about Tupac being the best rapper alive.
Well,
yeah,
she is someone in a high position of governmental power. She may know. She
corrected herself later. Like, somebody called her on it, and she corrected herself, saying that it's West girls think Tupac lives on. West Coast girls.
I have no hate in that at all.
No, I'm totally okay with that. Because for all we know, she's absolutely right, and Tupac and Andy Kaufman are just chilling somewhere together.
Cuba, perhaps?
Perhaps Cuba, perhaps New Mexico. That's what's really happened. That is what's really happening in Area 51. It's not aliens. It's Tupac and Andy Kaufman and the first Paul McCartney all just hanging out, living the rest of their lives.
Stop.
You knew I was going to ruin this show somehow.
But really, if you were the president, or if you had that level of access, are you really going to care about aliens or who shot JFK? No, you're going to figure out where Tupac is, where Elvis is. That's going to be the first thing you do in office. Yeah. It better be, at least.
I mean, yeah.
I love it.
Who do your first day? Okay, who do I need to talk to about where Elvis actually is? Who do I need to talk to about this?
Tommy Lee Jones.
Elvis is not that he just went home.
I think that's a good place to end this.
Not at all, but that's where it's going to end.
I think before we take it even further into Wonderland. So thanks for listening to the Fairly KickAss Podcast and the Fairly KickAss Deep Dive on Tupac Shakur. I don't know what that motion was, Zach.
He was swimming. He was diving. I got it. I got you. I was there. I saw.
Oh, I'm so out of it.
Do we want to talk briefly about the next time we go into deep waters?
Oh, yeah. We should do that.
We should do that.
Spin the thingy.
And okay. Yeah. Wheel. Do the thing. Okay.
5,000 in a spin?
No whammies.
No, it's back, free spaces, and a whammy. No whammies here, actually. No whammies here, actually. Just a much different take.
Okay.
A band who I believe within the last 2 months put a new record out, but is completely 90s and all the way and total hot garbage. Except it's literally garbage what we'll be talking about our next deep dive. And I guess that will involve a brand new album from Shirley Manson and the Crew.
You said hot garbage, and I definitely had a thing for Shirley Manson, so...
I mean, who didn't?
It's true. It's true.
Right on.
So that's what we'll go in a completely new direction. And the hope is that every time we do this segment, we just do a complete 180 and go in a whole nother way that we've done before.
I love it. So make sure you're staying tuned for that. Keep in touch with us at fairlykickass.com. What are our tweets and things?
At Fairly KickAss on Twitter, fairlykickass@gmail.com. Also, no one has emailed us yet, and I am very sad about that. I go to bed late at night thinking maybe there's going to be an email in this box. And I'm hoping our producer is putting that sad Cymbalta music here in the background. But Yeah,
You laugh, but he sends me messages at 4 a.m. That's just that's the thing. He's like, nope, nothing today. Still,
no messages, guys.
He drifts.
Single tear comes down the cheek. Facebook, search for us. Search for Fairly KickAss on Facebook. You will find us there. Jay mentioned fairlykickass.com, and your only source for the Fairly KickAss podcast is Spotify.
Wait! I just got it. Would it be too expensive to then during that little thing to put in the walking away music from the Incredible Hulk?
That's the one we need. Yes, that's perfect, and would certainly get us removed from Spotify, but possibly worth it.
No, if look, there's no way that of all the things that have happened on this show in the last almost year, gentlemen, that is not going to be it. Would you like a top 10 list of things that we got thrown off for?
Oh man, we should do that list. Yes.
We will. Yes, we will.
All right. Well, that's great. So that's the thing.